Many times when someone is suffering from a chronic or a debilitating condition, you often end up in a situation where you're moving from one practitioner to another practitioner, you're moving from one modality to a different modality in constant search for a solution that will finally address the underlying and the root cause of your problem. In today's video, I'm going to share with you something that goes completely beyond what many will consider as a potential solution. Now, this was something I personally had to do a lot of reflection on because it was a key component that was holding me back in my healing. Something that has kept me lodged so deeply within the state of sickness, within a state where my very ailment was defining my existence. In this video, I'm going to share with you something that can profoundly shift this and take you to the depths of the root cause of your illness, but it's going beyond what many would consider conventional. So I need you to have an open mind when you listen to this, because this may not resonate with all of you. Some of you may not be ready to hear this message, and some people may want to chase me with a pitchfork or panga or something, thinking, what the hell is this guy talking about? And I'm clearly not to be blamed for my condition, and I'm in no way trying to put blame, because I know many of the teachers or proponents of this concept of thinking will often say that your chronic condition is your fault, and I'm in no way saying this, but it is something that is very core and integral to this concept, or the way in which this is being portrayed, and something which requires a lot of self-reflection. So, like I said, this is something that is beyond what many would consider conventional. Some of you may have read this book called Psycho-Cybernetics by the author Maxwell Maltz, who was a famous plastic surgeon. And he talks about this notion of how by changing the self-image that you hold, you can essentially change yourself into achieving huge goals that were previously thought as unachievable, or even achieving a state of health that you may never have conceptualized before. Now, what this goes into is talking about how we hold our self-image, how we allow a certain condition to define our existence. And by changing that self-image, by changing how you see yourself into someone that is healthy, that is vibrant, full of energy, and able to do all these miraculous things that you previously thought were unachievable, you can go about visualizing yourself as well as transitioning yourself into a totally new identity that is no longer associated with a chronic or debilitating health condition. Now, some may think, well, this is so far-fetched. Clearly, there are other markers that define our chronic debilitating condition. There are factors beyond the self-image, and for sure, they are there. But this can be one of those profound aspects that could shift the way in which you see yourself. To see yourself as being a healthier, more vibrant version of yourself. Because we often set boundaries on our self-image, thinking we'll never be able to do that. I'll never be able to run a 100-mile marathon. I'll never be able to do this. We set these limitations on ourselves. And these limitations end up defining who we are as people. Now, for somebody who has a chronic condition where you have a lack of mobility, you may see yourself as somebody who can never escape that sort of reality. And by doing that, and by continuously reinforcing the self-image, we end up keeping ourselves within the situation. Now, I often talk about having chronic acid reflux on my channel. And I talk about hypothyroidism. These are things which I've personally had to deal with. And the chronic acid reflux was something that I dealt with for decades. And this is something that ended up defining my identity. I said, I can't go out to restaurants. I can't join friends and go to certain places because I can't tolerate certain types of foods. And I know that those restaurants don't cater for people like me. Or I know the venue that they're going to, they will not be able to cater for me. So I allow this condition to start defining my very existence. And because I'm constantly setting my self-image and defining my existence by this very health condition, I end up creating an image of myself that has this condition. When people talk about me, they always say, well, Jayshul, he's got all these dietary restrictions, and I allow those dietary restrictions to become an integral part of me. And for many of us that are trying to heal from this condition, you may look at it, and I know I used to be in this very same spot where I used to often think to myself, well, if I break these rules, I know I'm going to be end up suffering as a result. If I know I consume these wrong foods, I'm going to end up having to suffer the consequences. So I allow for it, and these external factors result in it becoming an integral part of my identity, because I know I can't shift from these, and it defines my self-image. So even though I was moving from modality to modality, moving from different health practitioners, trying to search for the solution, I was never coming up with a solution that was sustainable and that was achieving the desired results. And yes, you learn a lot through this process, but this was a factor that I really needed to humble myself, and I really needed to sort of recognize that I was playing into the condition by creating a self-image that was defined by this very condition of chronic acid reflux. So this is something that one really needs to take that step back, to bring in conscious awareness, bring in that presence of God, bring in that heightened sense of awareness, so that you can reflect upon the thoughts, the actions that end up defining ourselves. Because sometimes, even if you may recognize that you still visualize and you see yourself as a person with this condition, and you make the concerted effort to shift your image, to visualize yourself eating foods that previously you were unable to tolerate. Maybe it's potatoes or something healthy that you weren't previously able to tolerate. You visualize yourself eating these foods and not having an adverse reaction, and you're doing the work. However, you still may be having those unconscious actions that are still associated with the self-image. And this was something that I really needed to recognize, because I was still making a lot of decisions and choices based on the underlying subconscious belief around my identity being defined by this chronic condition. And so for one, in order to shift from this and to create a identity that is of full health and vibrancy, it requires a lot of awareness on the actions that we take, a lot of practice in order to visualize a version of yourself that is completely healed, that is free from a lot of these chronic debilitating conditions. But essentially, the one thing that I needed to realize and really bring down into the core of my identity was to recognize that it's not just about compromising and saying, well, it's fine, I'm going to this place, I know I'm going to eat something that's not in alignment with where my condition is able to tolerate. It's not about making those exceptions. It's not about making compromises. It's about shifting the way you view it. So you can still be very health conscious. You can still take a lot of the learnings that you gained throughout this process and incorporate it, but you shift the way in which your identity perceives these actions. So what am I trying to say here? What am I trying to convey with this message? Is to say, even though I recognize that consuming processed foods that have been cooked in hydrogenated oils, are bad for our health, but I'm not doing it from the perspective of an identity that is associated with a chronic condition. I'm doing it from holding a self-image of someone who is healthy, who is vibrant, who makes choices that will sustain your health and vibrancy. So I'm shifting the self-image from somebody who was previously unable to tolerate it because I define myself by a chronic condition, to one in which I'm holding a different image of a person who is healthy, who is vibrant, and who is making choices that is in alignment with positive health outcomes. We're making choices based on a wider course of action. And that is essentially the shift that we need to make in order to shift away from the image of a person who is defined by a lot of these ailing characteristics to somebody who is a full health and vibrancy. And that is what the shift in identity is all about. And I'd like to leave you with a quotation from this book because I think it's a really powerful book. And the quotation is, "The self-image sets the boundaries of individual accomplishment." And essentially, this quote highlights the idea that our self-perception influences what we believe we can achieve. What you believe you can achieve is being defined by your self-image. So let's make this concerted effort to shift our image away from this position of poor health, chronic health condition that defines our identity, to one in which we see ourselves as vibrant, healthy individuals, making healthy choices, inspiring others to do the same, and to allow for a society where better health outcomes are the inevitable result. So hopefully this video has helped to spread some light and to shift your perspective, and hopefully nobody is angry with me and wanting to chase me with a pitchfork and a panga. I'm merely trying to help you with this video to try and shift your image so that we no longer end up being defined by these conditions and we end up in a situation where we inspire the best in ourselves. So if any of this resonates with you, please do like, share, subscribe, leave your comments below because I'd love to hear what you think. I know no one likes to really comment on my videos, but if you do have anything worthwhile to share, please do share it. Even if you're angry with me and want to chase me with a pitchfork, put your comments down below. I'll be happy to respond to your comments.